I want to thank you very much for coming. I'm seeing a lot of old friends. I see some old friends who have just come in, family, and new friends. And so I welcome you all and thank you for coming to hear my story. And I want to thank Joe, of course, and Ken, who was a partner with me in crime at St. Paul's many long years ago as we brought meditation and healing and other programs to St. Paul's. Before I start, I'd like us to just take a few moments of silence so that we can just gather in as a community and center ourselves from wherever we've been already today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joe has asked me to tell the story of my spiritual journey, much of which is captured in my book, When Spirit Calls. But he, of course, wants me to bring that up to date, so I'll do that as well. When Spirit Calls is the story of my leaving my job and career that I loved as head of a charitable foundation in Boston. I shocked my colleagues when I told them that I was leaving to become a spiritual healer. You can imagine. This is a story grounded in work and family, but it's really an adventure story that takes me all over the world to different sacred sites, to different healers, to different teachers, and indeed to the Episcopal Church. It's a love story. It's a love story in relationship. It's a love story with the divine. So the spiritual journey, my spiritual journey, starts in the congregation of Howard Thurman in Boston. Howard Thurman was the grandson of a slave. He was named one of the 12 best preachers in 1953. I got to know him when he was 9. He became a friend of my family's. He was a mentor to civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. He taught me so many things that I now see as themes in my life. He taught that the rule of God is inside. He taught that we all belong to each other. He taught that we needed to be still so that we could hear the voice that was waiting and ready to guide us. He said that whatever it is that stands between us and our total exposure to God's love needs to be worked at bit by bit until we get rid of it. I think this is a great explanation of spiritual healing. We like to think of spiritual healing as the miracle of the physical healings, and that's important. But spiritual healing is often about taking us to a deeper place, to the place where we know peace and love inside, in our connection with each other, that common consciousness that we all share. So he also talked about mysticism. He talked about mysticism as the way that our spirit responds to an encounter with God and how we bring that into our world. We might want to ask ourselves, what kind of encounters have we had? A brief message, an experience, a sense of awe? What experiences might we have had that have given us a new insight, or perhaps changed the way that we look at the world? So Howard Thurman was really the important part of the beginning of my spiritual journey. My healing journey started on a squash court, my first and last game with my husband when I blew out a disc. A week later, I couldn't move. 7 weeks later, I had surgery. Now I could move and I could stand up, but I still had pain. So I looked for alternatives. And I went to acupressure and that kind of thing. And I discovered meditation and affirmations. And I was getting better. And then 8 years later, I coughed in the night. And I screamed in pain once again. Colin offered to call me an ambulance, and I refused. I stayed in bed. I asked my acupuncturist to come to my home. One day I stood up and with a walker, and I looked down, and my leg was turning purple. And my bladder was leaking. And I said, oh dear, I'm in deep trouble. I thought I was having a spiritual experience, believe it or not. I actually said this to my son, Brad. But I didn't know where to turn, and Colin wanted me to do something immediately. Go to the emergency room, do something. I said, no, I don't have any guidance yet. I'm not going to do anything. So I waited overnight, and the next morning I woke up, and I knew exactly what to do. I called the president of a hospital whom I happened to know, not as a friend, but in a business relationship, and I told him my situation, and he called an ambulance, and he got me a surgeon. This was at 8:30 on a Saturday morning. He answered the phone. So I think when I was looking for a cure to my back problem, I didn't really know what I was seeking. I couldn't know. I didn't know what was out there. But I was beginning to feel something happening within me. So I took what I learned to the hospital, those affirmations, the meditation, the way to get inside to be a little more peaceful. I turned away the offer of a sedative before going into surgery. And I had a miracle. I really had a miracle. And my acupuncturist came to the hospital, and I left with very little pain. So this was just such an extraordinary experience to have had the experience before that was so painful, and then this experience have the quality of a miracle. So we called a friend of ours in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and asked if we could come visit her. And she said, well, when you come, you must see Chris. And I'm like, Chris? Who's Chris? And she said, Chris helps balance your spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental energy. Well, this was really astonishing because after my surgery, I had had all these incredible experiences. I had bright light come to me in the middle of the night when my eyes were closed. And when I opened them, the light was gone. And then Colin found me on my bed where I had been meditating with my sore back, and he said I looked like a total stranger. My hair was black. My face was like a death mask. My skin was a pale ivory white. So I called a psychic, and the psychic said, you're in the process of balancing your physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental energy. I didn't know what she meant, but then I heard it a week later, and off I went to Santa Fe. So in Santa Fe, when I saw this healer, Chris, something happened in me. Something opened in me, was liberated. Chris is a healer who uses acupuncture and takes you into past life or other life experiences. And sometimes you hear bells ring. And it was really quite extraordinary. And I had no idea what to expect. But what happened for me was that I experienced myself being raped. And then I experienced myself taking my own life. But what was so amazing about this situation was I was then filled with the most incredible love and forgiveness that you can imagine. It was as if everything is okay. The only thing there is love. So I left there after just that one session, changed. I had a new sense of confidence. Our family was going to be featured in a book that was just coming out. And I was able to speak from that place of confidence, from that place in the heart, just spontaneously. After that, I discovered that I had healing energy in my hands. We were on a ski weekend, and everyone else went off skiing. I didn't ski. And our host came back, and he had a fever and the flu. And I said, oh, well, maybe I could try doing a little acupressure with you, just like someone had done on me. He said, fine. He's a lawyer. And we're sitting in front of the fire, and I, do a little acupressure. The next day, he's back on the slopes. And he said, I will go on the Today Show with you. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? So after that, I found that people were getting sick in my presence, or they were hurting themselves. Colin got a sprained ankle. Somebody had kidney stone attack, headaches, a finger that had been bleeding for hours, even a newspaper vendor who collapsed as I was paying him. So I had to pay attention, but I was just watching this happen. And then I had this experience of unity. I was with a friend in Washington, D.C. at a conference, and we were in the hotel room at the end of the conference. She was African American, and her name is Wendy, very close friend. And she and I had often meditated together. We were really spiritual buddies. Well, as we were talking with each other, her skin started getting light, and my skin started getting dark. And we were like, what is going on here? So we decided that we felt some magnetic energy. So we thought, okay, we'll do an experiment, and we'll try walking away from each other. And that didn't work so well because there was this energy that was pulling us back. And we did it again and again and again. So after this experience, she had to go to dinner, and I stayed in my room. And we discovered later that night when we got together that we had both been in a somewhat altered state for several hours, and that cleared at exactly the same moment, and we were in different places. So, meanwhile, I feel as if I'm being led around by my nose. There's some guiding force that's inviting me to different places in the world. I'm invited by the Jewish Community Relations Council to go on a trip to Israel, where we walk the path of Jesus, and I have a profound encounter in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I'm invited on a trip to Egypt, and you'll hear more about that later. I'm invited to meet a spiritual teacher, a meditation teacher, actually, is what she was called. I thought I was just going to go meet a friend who was a meditation teacher. It was a guru, and I ended up going to India. We discovered an Episcopal church just 2 blocks from our new home. I kept being invited. I kept being led. I hadn't planned to do any of these things. And all this was happening while I was at the foundation, running this foundation, and the work was getting better and better and bigger. And I actually attribute that to the fact that I was on the spiritual path. And so it was possible to do more. So I'd been at the foundation for 17 years. And I thought I would be there forever. And then something happened. And that something was that I was asked by a TV station to do their kickoff speech for a public service campaign. And they asked me to identify 3 urban problems and offer solutions. Me. Who, me? I'm like, really? Okay. So I'm sitting there thinking about what to do and what to say, and I have a vision. It's like a download. And what I hear is conditions will change only when we learn to support each other, when we learn to share with each other without fear of losing something ourselves. All problems are caused by fear, and they can't be solved by ideology or money. And I thought, really? I've been trying to solve problems with money for 17 years. All those grants, millions. No, the answer is opening the heart. We have to open the heart to each other. So in that moment, I realized that someday I would be leaving the foundation because I wanted to help people open their hearts, and I wanted to open mine. A few months later, I was going back to Santa Fe, and Chris couldn't see me, so I saw another healer there, and it just happened that she was planning to do a healer's training a year hence. And she wasn't sure she was going to do this, but I found it intriguing. So, right after I got back from Santa Fe, I got an invitation to go to Egypt. And while I was in Egypt, I lay in the sarcophagus of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And while I was lying there thinking I was going to get guidance from the gods, the guidance came up from within me. And I said, I will go forth and do it in thy service. I did not know what it was. I went home, and there was a sermon waiting in the mail from Trinity Church in Boston. The title of it was, Dare You Be Transformed. Ugh. And my hands were shaking because I saw references to the transfiguration of Jesus and Moses on Mount Sinai. I had just been at the Basilica of the Holy Transfiguration at the base of Mount Sinai, and I had climbed to the top of Mount Sinai at sunrise. Do you think I was being called? So 3 weeks later, I resigned. That same day, Colin received a call from the University of Pennsylvania asking him if he would be willing to be interviewed for the deanship of Penn Law School. I'm free to go wherever for the first time in 18 years. The next night, I get a call from a priest at an Episcopal church in suburban Boston asking me to do a healing service at her church. I had never been to her church, and I had never done a healing service in any church. The next night, I heard from my friend, the healer, who was thinking she might do a healing training the next fall, that she was actually going to do it. But first, we had to move here to Chestnut Hill. After we moved to Rex Avenue, I had 12 days to get ready to go to this healer's training, and I left poor Colin alone. When I went to the training, this is where things got really interesting. I was there for 6 weeks, and this form of healing was a guided healing in which people experience a story from another lifetime, perhaps, or maybe it's just an allegory, and they connect with that divine place within. We spent a few weeks working on each other and then had clients come from all over the country, actually. I had to face my fears in doing this work. I was introduced to all kinds of things that were new to me. But when I was ready to go home, I felt stronger than ever. And I came back to our house on Rex Ave in Chestnut Hill. The next morning, I could not move. My sacrum at the base of my spine was moving, just like this. Ooh is right. Who said that? Ooh. So there I was. And I had to believe that it was somehow connected to what was going on for me. Colin would say, how do you know you don't need to go see a doctor? And I said, I don't think so. But I did get help from an acupuncturist, and I started getting better. And then weeks later, I had an experience where my spine was readjusting itself for 18 hours. 18 painful hours, 18 prayerful hours, and this followed a massage. It was an extraordinary experience. And we were set to entertain the faculty of Penn Law School in our home in a few days. And I entertained from my third floor bedroom, and the caterers brought the stuffed mushrooms and pizza. So that pain didn't totally release until 5 months later when I was in India at Easter at an ashram. Meanwhile, I had been doing some healings here in Philadelphia, including one woman who heard destructive voices in her head. And after she got home, she called me and she said, the voices are gone, but I'm hearing the 23rd Psalm, and I never memorized that psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Needless to say, I cried. But what these healings taught me, both my own and those that I experienced with others, was that there is this place inside us that knows peace, that knows love, that is a common consciousness that connects us one to another. So I would like at this moment to take a little pause and for us to have a contemplative experience based on a vision that I had in a healing myself in Santa Fe. And I hope that this will give us some hope in these times that we are in. So I'd invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. If not, that's fine too. And these are words that I'm actually saying. They're words of what I'm experiencing that I am telling the person who is facilitating. The colors are spinning and spinning. All the colors in every place, everywhere in the world. There is absolutely no place without color. The colors are all around this room. Everywhere in the world, people are joining hands. Japan, China, India, Vietnam, Guatemala, everywhere. I'm seeing everyone in the world together, putting down weapons and joining hands. Everybody. It doesn't matter who they are. Their arms are up in the air and they're saying, "Peace be to God. Peace be to God." All warheads disintegrate. My arms are still in the air. There will be no more war. There will be peace. We are all colors, every one of us, everywhere. There is nothing we don't want for everybody else. We are one. The birds are singing. The trees are swaying. The ocean is calm. And the moon is over the ocean. The light coming from the moon is bright like the sun. And behind the moon, the sky is black. And the sun is shining there too. The sky turns blue and purple, then peach and pink. It's all there together. It's all one. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So the same message that was coming through the healings also came from the spiritual teachers. Howard Thurman said we all belong to each other. The gurus said, see God in each other. In the Christian tradition, we say, see Christ in each other. So people ask me, what happened after 1990 when the story of the book ends? What happens after that is I come to St. Paul's, Director of Contemplative and Healing Ministries. I happen to meet with Colin, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I go to the ashram. But the big story is this book, When Spirit Calls. The book ends in 1990. I started writing this in 1994. But I never had any intention of writing a book, just like all those other things. My friend Wendy dropped by my home here in Philadelphia on Rex Avenue, and I was telling her how much I loved my healing work, but that I didn't know where it was leading me. And she said, you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been, and you have no idea. So why don't you write about just 6 or 8 of your spiritual experiences just for yourself? So I did. On my vacation, I had my notebook and a pen. You know, this is the 90s. You didn't have laptops. And what came out was the first sentence of the book. It wasn't a distinct story. It was the beginning of a long story. And the words kept coming, and I came home and I started writing on my computer. When this happened, I'm like, I never, ever wanted to write a book. But here I am. So it was a story, my story of writing the book, and the journey of the book is a journey of letting go and surrender, of listening and following, of facing my fears. There are a lot of things I never wanted to write about. What would people think about those very personal family dramas, or the way we brought up our children, or my seeing a guru, or having those past life experiences, or what about those predictions of a world in chaos? But I kept writing, and I kept writing, and I kept writing. And the book was always there for me. So you can ask, why did I keep writing all these years? It's been 24 years. I took a year off to be here at St. Paul's, another year to be studying at Chestnut Hill College, another year to travel to Portland, Oregon, where Colin was president of Reed College. But it was always there. I was led. I was absolutely led. There was a point where I realized that this story could not belong to me. I had to give it away, that I had had this somewhat exciting and exotic life in order that it could be shared. And also, I had made that commitment in the Great Pyramid of Giza, in that sarcophagus. Remember? I will go forth and I will do it. I didn't know what it was, and at first I thought it was the healing work. When Colin read the first full version of the book, he came to me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "This is it." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "This is it, this is it." He had just read that, He said, "This is it." I finally got it. This was it. And then when I received the first hardbound copy of the book published, and I read that commitment, I cried. This was it. For now. Of course, whatever we do is it every day, right? So I began to think that if my story of facing pain and fear could help others face their wounds and their fears, then it would be worth it. And if I could help people understand that there is a guiding spirit ready and willing to help us and guide us in our lives, even in these turbulent and chaotic times, then it would be worth it. And if I could help people be inspired to find peace inside themselves, and thus bring peace to the world, it would be worth it. If I could inspire them to love and forgive, to open their hearts to the very possibility that we are all indeed one, that there is common ground, and that there is a common consciousness, then it would be worth it. We live in turbulent times. I have a good friend who says, "This is the great breaking open." I like that terminology because it suggests that this is an opportunity as things are broken open for us to see what needs healing and to bring our healing to those places of pain that are creating the divisions, the violence, the whatever, wherever the hurt places are. When Spirit Calls appears to be a book about Joan Diver. But I see it as something very different. I see it as a mirror in which readers can look at their own lives, their own hopes, their own dreams, their own search for meaning, and the ways that love and light and challenges have danced through their days. And it is my hope that this book will inspire people to continue on their spiritual path or to begin to look for that place of healing and wholeness so that together we can create a more loving world. Thank you for being such an attentive audience.